The Uvalde CISD Police Chief Pete Arredondo is breaking his silence and defending law enforcement's response to the mass shooting in an interview with the Texas Tribune. Joining us now to discuss is Texas Tribune reporter James Barragan. James, thanks so much for the time this afternoon.
Hi there. Thank you for having us.
Well, we know that officers were in that school building for a long time. What did the chief say was the reason it took so long to get inside that classroom?
Well, I think one of the newest details and more widely spread details that this interview has revealed to us is that Chief Arredondo has told us that he tried to open one of the doors into the classrooms where the shooter was. That door was locked, which created all kinds of other problems for law enforcement. You've heard criticisms say, why wouldn't they just break down the door? Why couldn't they just kick it in and get inside and shoot the gunman? Well, those doors, Arredondo says, are specially designed doors that are put in schools to protect students and teachers from precisely these kinds of active shooter attacks. If you're inside, you're very safe. So that a gunman who's outside can't break in and just attack or shoot at the children. However, when the gunman got inside, that made the law enforcement response infinitely more complicated because then they couldn't get inside and the gunman was in there and the police did not know if there were more students and teachers who were still alive inside.
You mentioned in the story, in your reporting, he didn't have the keys and they waited and tried several keys to try to get in that room. Is it unusual? Did he talk about it being unusual for the chief of police not to have the keys to get inside that room?
Well, Chief Arredondo has told us that they don't carry keys and that they usually, when they go to a school district and they need to get inside, they just ask somebody for them. Law enforcement experts that we talked to said that that was highly unusual. And they were very critical of that, saying that if you're the school district police, your entire job is to have jurisdictions over those schools. So to not have easy access into any room is really a faux pas. There was heavy criticism of that.
Was he calling the shots that day? Was he the one making the decisions?
Well, of course, state officials, DPS, have said that he's the incident commander and have said that he made the wrong decision in telling people not to go in and saying there was a barricaded suspect. Chief Arredondo wanted to make it very clear to the public that he did not consider himself the incident commander. He did not identify himself as the incident commander, and he gave no order to any officers not to go into the classroom. What he said is that he didn't even have his radios. So how would he be communicating that order to other people? Of course, that's his perspective, but it's a new detail that we've learned from this interview.
You mentioned the radio. He also didn't have any body armor on. Did he tell you why he didn't have his radio, why he was using his cell phone that day?
That was one of the new revelations that we learned through this interview. And he did give us an explanation. He said that when he got there, he believed he was the first officer to respond to the scene. And so he wanted to get into the school as soon as possible, confront the gunman as soon as possible, and he wanted to have both hands available on his hand so that he could have the quickest and most accurate shot at the gunman. That decision has been heavily criticized by the experts that we talked to because they said by dropping his radios as soon as he got there, he completely lost the ability to be an incident commander. He completely lost all communications with the other officers who responded. And it made it way more difficult to have an organized law enforcement response.
Is he cooperating currently with this investigation?
That was one of the questions that we wanted to learn as well. Obviously, DPS has said that he is no longer cooperating. Arredondo told us that he has given multiple interviews, not only to DPS, but to state officials, including the governor, and joint interviews with DPS analysts and the FBI. However, after DPS made those statements that he was the incident commander and made the wrong decision, Arredondo's lawyers told us that he stopped cooperating with DPS. They said the door is still open for him to cooperate, and he wants to cooperate with that Rangers investigation, But he said he would like to get a look at the transcripts of his previous comments to DPS so that they can stay consistent with what he's already said.
Final question. A lot of blame is falling on Chief Arredondo. How did he respond, or how is he responding to the criticism he's receiving? Does he expect charges even to be filed in this case?
Look, this tragedy has been very personal to Chief Arredondo. One of the teachers in there was married to his second cousin. The other teacher who was killed by the gunman was married to one of his police officers. So it's very close to home for him. He has not wanted to speak out in order not to cause any more grief and pain for the public and the survivors and the families of the victims who are going through this. But he said this has gotten to a point where his personal integrity and his professional reputation have been called into question, and he wanted to at least put his story out there so that the public could get a better understanding of why he made the decisions that he made. He understands that it's not a perfect response, but he wanted to give his explanation because, as you said, he has been the person most identified as responsible for this incident and the response to it.
If you haven't read the article yet, it's at the Texas Tribune. It's fantastic. James, a wonderful job telling this story, a very difficult story. And I know a lot of people still have a lot of questions, but there are answers to be had, and you found a lot of them. James Barragan with the Texas Tribune, thanks so much for your time.
Thank you.